Say prayers, thank you. Do we stand for? Oh, sorry. I am new to this job. I do apologise. Thank you.
Good afternoon, councillors. Very good to be with you as always. I understand the point of the agenda today, and so we start with a prayer for the NHS. Heavenly Father, we give you thanks for the gift of healthcare in this country, for all who work in the medical profession, both on the front line and in support services. We give you thanks that we benefit from so much of your blessings to us in this work. We pray for this council as it deliberates its response to the situation here in Grantham. We pray for wisdom, for guidance, and for courage. We unite our prayers together with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, the power, and the glory, forever and ever. Amen. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you, Father Stewart. If everybody would like to be seated, thank you. Good afternoon. It is 1 o'clock on Tuesday, the 14th of June, and welcome to this extraordinary meeting of South Kesteven District Council. Before we start, as it is a bit warm in the chamber this afternoon, if anybody wishes to remove their jackets, then please feel free to do so. My name is My name is Councillor Helen Crawford, and I'm the chairman of the council. We are not expecting the fire alarm to sound this afternoon. If the fire alarm does go off, please leave the building via the nearest exit. The assembly point is the green in front of St Peter Hill's surgery. Before we proceed with business of the meeting, I would like to invite Councillor Ian Selby to address the council further to his request. Thank you, Councillor Selby.
Thank you very much indeed, Madam Chairman. During the last full council meeting on the agenda item regarding future ways of working and making the most of corporate assets, I made comments that in hindsight I could have made more tactfully. It was regarding the practice of working from home. Although I said the practice can lead to a culture of laziness, I certainly was not saying that everyone that works from home is lazy. I would not deliberately offend people, and I apologise for the implication of that comment. It is not an easy job at times being a councillor, regardless of what some people might think. Some people are very quick on the uptake to criticise us, and they think that we are fair game. But what they fail to recognise is that we too are people, just trying to do the best for our community. For the people that know that I didn't mean to make the comments in the way that they came out, I'd like to express a sincere thank you to you. I've made mistakes in the past, Madam Chairman, and I hope I won't make many in the future. None of us are perfect. I've often said that we can do things 99.9% of the time really well. But if we make just one mistake, we are always remembered for that one error, rather than for all the good things that we have achieved. When I make a mistake, of course, I will put my hand up and I will apologise. My constituents have, though, always come first, even before my own wishes. I've put my heart and soul into representing them, and when the day comes that they don't wish me to represent them, I will simply move on. We've just had the Platinum Jubilee celebrations for Her Majesty the Queen, and I take inspiration from Her Majesty's dedication to the millions of people that she has dedicated her life to. Finally, Madam Chairman, if I'm going to upset my fellow colleagues here in the council chamber, I may as well do it in style, and especially now as I have the attentive ear of the monitoring officer when I say I'm very proud to represent the Harrowby ward, the flagship ward of this council. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you very much, but I think Bourne will disagree. Thank you for that, Councillor Selby. That's greatly appreciated. I would like to begin by welcoming all councillors, officers and the members of the press and public who are joining this meeting today. I'd also like to draw your attention to the fact that this meeting is being recorded. Any councillor who wishes to speak should press the button on their microphone. A green light will signal that you are in a queue. I will call councillors to speak in the order in which they appear on the list. Please do not press your button again if your light is green. This will take you out of the queue. When it is your turn to speak, I will call your name and the Democratic Service team will ensure your microphone is live. They will also turn your microphone off when you have finished speaking. You will not be able to turn your own microphone on or off. This will be done for you. The button on your microphone will allow only you to join or remove yourself from the list of councillors requesting to speak. Members are also reminded that when speaking, comments should be addressed through the chairman and members should speak clearly into their microphone. Members are also reminded that when the chairman starts to speak, you are to stop speaking and be seated. The length of time for speeches remains 5 minutes. You will be warned when you have 30 seconds left and your time is up. Throughout this meeting, we'll be voting by a show of hands. The only occasion we will be using a roll call vote will be if the recorded vote is requested. The rules of debate are set out in the Constitution, but here is a brief reminder. A member may speak once on motions and once on each amendment that is put. Other than exercising a right to reply at the end of a debate on a motion, the only time a member may speak a second time is to raise a point of order, point of information or personal explanation or propose procedural motions. Happy with that? We will now begin to work our way through today's agenda, which is short. Right, item 1, apologies for absence. Can I please ask the Assistant Director of Governance to confirm any apologies that have been received for absence? Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Today we've received apologies for absence from councillors Ashley Baxter, David Bellamy, Pam Bosworth, Bob Broughton, George Shivers, John Dawson, Rosemary KB Brown, Anna Kelly, Nikki Manterfield, Annie Mason, Nick Robbins, Penny Robbins, Susan Sandall, Jackie Smith, Judy Stevens, Ian Stokes, Dean Ward, Hannah Westrop, Amanda Wheeler, Mark Whittington, Jane Woods and Paul Woods. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Did you say Jane Kingman because she sent apologies to me? Right, could you note that then, please? Thank you. Are there any other further apologies to be noted by anybody? No, thank you. Agenda item 2, disclosures of interests. Agenda item 2 covers the disclosure of interests of members. Members are reminded that a disclosable pecuniary interest is an interest any member holds where they or their spouse or civil partner is likely to receive a financial benefit or disadvantage because of the decision that is being made. For example, this could be because of their employment or a dividend they have in respect of an affected business. It also covers any land they hold. Once you have declared an interest, you should leave the meeting, not speak or vote on the debate. If any member has any interest that they need to disclose, please indicate them now. So, thank you. If during the debate it becomes clear to you that you have a disclosable pecuniary interest or any other interest in an item, you can declare it as a relevant point of the meeting. We will now proceed with the next item of business. Agenda item 3, Grantham and District Hospital. The required number of councillors in accordance with the Constitution signed a requisition to call for an extraordinary meeting to consider the outcome of the Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group's acute service review, which includes a proposed permanent downgrade of Grantham and District Hospital Accident and Emergency to an urgent treatment centre. May I ask for the proposition of a motion, please? Thank you. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. You should all have a motion before you. Will I be required to, would you like me to read that out or?
Yes, please.
Yeah. South Kesteven District Council opposes any downgrade of Grantham and District Hospital Accident and Emergency Services. We call for full restoration of the 24/7 accident and emergency services and acute beds available at Grantham and District Hospital prior to its night closure in August 2016. Any loss of acute care at Grantham and District Hospital will result in the most sick, most vulnerable, including our elderly, our children, our lowest income, our disabled residents, and those without cars or unable to drive, having to travel among the furthest for acute medical treatment. This includes the latest proposal to downgrade Grantham and District A&E by Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group in its Acute Service Review 2021, which will cement the reduction in acute services made by the CCG and United Lincolnshire Hospital Trust over several years. According to the LCCG ASR, this will require up to 700, so this is the 3% people that will not be able to use their proposed urgent treatment centre, local people a year travelling to alternative A&E sites for appropriate care. It will result in worsened medical outcomes for those people and put lives at risk.
Thank you very much. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Ian Selby.
Just reserve my right to speak a little bit later in the debate. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yes, you can. We will now go to debate. Councillor Morgan.
Thank you. First of all, thank you all for coming today. I appreciate it's an extraordinary meeting. Grantham Hospital serves a community of over 120,000 people and sits on the edge of the county. For over a decade, NHS bodies have nurtured a strategic objective to streamline acute NHS services and centralise them as much as possible at Lincoln County Hospital. There have been repeated attempts to close or downgrade Grantham District A&E as a result. One of the biggest obstacles campaigners have faced has been an ongoing denial by the CCG and ULHT that Grantham has an A&E at all. It took 2 Freedom of Information requests submitted in 2018 and 19 to finally prove this, and that was accepted as evidence in judicial review. The result was a clear indication not only of the wide range of acute conditions treated at the hospital, but also the severity of those conditions, which were everything from minor, the majority being minor, to life-threatening. Before night closure, over 36,000 people visited the A&E each year, with over 4,400 being admitted directly into the hospital via the emergency ambulances alone, and they stayed in 77 acute beds. Grantham is at least 25 miles from the next nearest alternative A&E, and it requires a minimum journey time of 45 minutes to get to Lincoln from Grantham Hospital, depending on time of day, weather, road conditions, whether you have a car, can drive, or if you're in a blue light ambulance. Independent evidence tells us that in an acute emergency, distance and time can mean the difference between life and death, risk increasing with every mile travelled. In the most recent bid to centralise acute services, the LCCG completed a public consultation and ASR. It included the downgrade or permanent downgrade of Grantham and District Hospital A&E to a 24/7 urgent treatment centre and cemented a reduction in acute care of beds in the hospital, increasing a reliance on care in the community, despite the issues we know exist there. It removed the emergency fracture treatment at Grantham as well, and it centralised all stroke care at Lincoln. The consultation itself was contentious. It lacked key details, including comparing the services that would be provided versus those lost. Despite this, the majority of respondents living in the Grantham area objected to the plans. The offer of a 24/7 service appears attractive, but the acute services available in an urgent treatment centre do not compare with those in an A&E unit. Furthermore, a member of staff at the hospital, highly qualified, said, if these plans go ahead, they will be irreversible. We will not see another A&E in Grantham for over 50 years. Worse, it will be the end of Grantham as a district hospital altogether, for the acute beds and the consultant team, which sits behind the A&E, will go. And by its own admittance, LCG state that at least 700 acutely ill patients will be forced to go elsewhere for treatment, away from local support. Many will be critically ill elderly residents. The loss of the 50 acute beds already is hugely worrying. Emergency patients can't be admitted into their local hospital if there aren't enough beds. The CCG made these cuts before public consultation. We need those beds back too. As our elderly patients live longer with increasingly complex needs, the LCCG Care in the Community proposal is no match for the team of consultants and equipment we had in our hospital's acute wards, which saved and extended the lives of our loved ones, and I include my mother in that. As the UTC at last now faces cuts, we must also ask, even if the urgent treatment centre were provided, how long would it remain open as a 24/7 unit? As outlined in the motion, the most vulnerable people in our community will be adversely affected by the plans, yet the LCCG board shockingly agreed to go ahead
30
regardless.
seconds left.
We must remind them of the NHS objectives. We need local acute care, which all can afford to access, and we are entitled to be treated fairly. Their proposals mean we will not receive the same level of access to care as someone living near any other large town or city in our county, despite growth plans for Grantham.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Do I have any other speakers? I have none indicated. Councillor Ian Selby.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I wasn't expecting it. I thought you'd have a list in front of you, Madam Chairman. Anyway, I'll certainly speak now if that's okay. Madam Chairman, when we are ill and in pain, or we awaken in the middle of the night in agony, we want to be taken to the very nearest place for help within throwing distance, not dragged 30 to 40 miles across the county over our pothole-infested roads. We've been scratching our heads in disbelief and wondering what on earth the people of Grantham have done to deserve being treated like second-class citizens. It feels like we are an inconvenience to the CCG and ULHT. I say to them, we are not here for your convenience. You are there to work for us. Decisions have been made in recent years by people whom I've heard. They've been called the hatchet men. They have consistently chopped at our services. The senior board members have been moved around the system to other areas, taking with them their hefty salaries and big fat pension pots. Whilst I don't mind somebody earning a high salary, they should at least do something to justify it to the taxpayers. If they were on performance-related pay, well, they certainly wouldn't earn much here in Grantham and our rural areas. We've made numerous arguments and points in the past for the retention of our A&E department. But I'd just make two here, Madam Chairman. First, the current fuel price hikes are adding to the burden, not just for the public and especially those on low income, but also for the ambulance service, having to make those extra long journeys. I ask, are we now officially in the middle of nowhere? And second point, from a planning and housing perspective, we are building thousands of new homes in our area, and we simply are unable to just refuse those applications. We risk losing planning appeals costing us thousands of pounds in the process if we do. However, if we build more houses and the population increases, surely that means even greater justification for increased health services. It should be noted as well, though, that access to health services is a material planning consideration. For me, Madam Chairman, the problem lies. So we've all been scratching our heads on how we go about saving our services at Grantham Hospital. But for me, the problem lies with the fact that both the CCG and ULHT are both unelected bodies. When they do not perform the wishes of the people, they still cannot be removed from their positions. I therefore feel, Madam Chairman, it would be a good idea, in my view, that there should be an elected health commissioner with powers of appointment. We have an elected police and crime commissioner, although some do a better job than others around the country. But we would then need a national petition put together with the support of other areas, and a petition of 100,000 signatures would then mean a debate in Parliament on the issue. Madam Chairman, I'd just like to finally say thank you very much to everybody in our community that's been campaigning to help save our A&E services. You know, we've had the people doing the vigils, we've had all sorts of people doing all sorts of campaigns, members in here, and just express a sincere thank you to everyone that's contributed in a positive way towards those services. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Selby. Councillor Adam Stokes.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I mean, Grantham A&E and Grantham Hospital is a very important and emotive issue that's been debated in the town for far too many years. After the constant changes that have been done at, as Councillor Selby stated, unelected individuals at CCGs, etc. But I would like to propose an amendment to the motion. Graham has got a copy of them, and I have furnished Councillor Morgan with a copy prior to the meeting, so she was aware. And it reads that South Kesteven District Council opposes any further downgrade of Grantham and District Hospital. We support the return of 24/7 access to Grantham and District Hospital, irrespective of what it might be called, to ensure that individuals can seek help when required. The proposed way forward, decided upon by NHS leaders, as the assurance that 97% of all cases could be administered by Grantham and District Hospital, with the remaining being taken to centres of excellence for the best treatment possible, with specialists in this field, which result in better outcomes for our patients and our residents in Grantham and the area. The model being proposed will also support a community-led local service working alongside our local GPs. South Kesteven District Council also supports the continued investment over the last 2 years in Grantham Hospital and wider Lincolnshire, with £5 million for 2 Lamore Flows theatres at Grantham Hospital, 3.3 million to refurbish and expand the critical surgical wards at Boston and Grantham Hospitals, 1.1 million towards the replacement of the digital cardiology system, 2.5 million for an artificial intelligence solution to support triage and management of the patient waiting list, 600,000 for a digital solution to support the MSK pathway, Grantham Hospital being chosen to be one of the 40 national community diagnostic centres, 3.8 million funding for a new CT scanners and imaging technology, 1.4 million for improvements to endoscopy services, endoscopy even, I will get there in the end, 1.6 million for a new MRI scanner, 378 million of ULHT debt written off by government, and most of the NHS trust outside of London. Whilst the decision of what happens at Grantham Hospital ultimately is taken by the United Lincolnshire Hospital Trust and the Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group, our aim is to secure the best services for residents who live in Grantham and the surrounding area. As the town continues to grow and develop, we will work with the Trust to bring further services and investment to Grantham and be part of a long-term discussion to plan for the future of healthcare in our area. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that motion, please?
Come on, it does now. Yes, Chairman, you do.
Yes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I appreciate the amendment. I think we're all on the same page and we all want to achieve, hopefully, something out of today's meeting. However, Councillor Stokes said that he'd furnished I think he said the Chief Executive and the Monitoring Officer and probably all the other officers with a copy of his amendment. But I haven't got a copy, and I wondered if the proposer and the seconder, if you'd discuss the amendment with them ahead of today, which might have been helpful, because I'm sure we're all trying to get to the same point in this. That's my point of order, but may I reserve the right to speak on either the amendment or the motion? Thank you, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, I was going to call you. Madam Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. I thought that these had been circulated and left on the desk. So I do apologise.
To sort of take it in, I appreciate Councillor Stokes has read it, but there's quite a lot in it. It was a long amendment. So I wonder if we might be able to have an adjournment to for us to read and take in what he's proposing.
Would 10 minutes suit? 5 minutes? Do you need 5 minutes? Could I ask monitoring officer Alan Robbins?
Just to confirm your answer to your question, Councillor Dill, because I believe that the amendment was raised with the original.
I'm sorry, could we just have quiet, please?
With the original person's motion, with Councillor Morgan's motion, with Councillor Morgan in advance. But I think that was today rather than days in advance.
Yes, I got named. If I might just clarify that I literally received it about 10 minutes before the meeting started.
Thank you, but we were very late in the day receiving your motion as well, Councillor Charmaine Morgan. Yes.
Point of information, this is usual practice in these meetings, and as much as I might have sympathy for Councillor Dill, some of his own members table amendments to stuff exactly on the day during the meeting, so you can't accuse us of doing anything different to what you would normally do as normal practice.
We'll give you 5 minutes now and we'll adjourn the meeting to 1:30, so that gives you 5 minutes to read it and digest. Call the meeting back to order, please. Councillor Robert Reid, you were going to second, I understand, if you'd like to speak. Thank you.
Yes, Madam Chairman, I would like to second this amendment. It does clearly portray what actually has been going on, and I'll reserve the right to speak later. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do I have any other speakers, please? I don't have any coming up on my. Thank you, Councillor Dilks.
Chairman, when you, oh, sorry.
Another point of order. Please don't raise your hands. You've already been instructed. If you wish to speak, you need to push the button down for your microphone. Then it will come up and you will be able to speak and they will sort your microphones out, please. Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Dilks.
Yeah, thanks, Madam Chairman. The reason I raised my hand because it was a point of order. I'm just asking for a ruling. Is that does when you propose an amendment, does the seconder have a right of a reply at the end? I know that in another place that is not the case.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to confirm, the mover of an amendment is not entitled to a right of reply. The mover of the original motion is entitled to a right of reply in relation to their motion and any amendment that's proposed.
Yeah.
So just to clarify, Councillor Morgan would be entitled to a right of reply for her original motion, but also a right of reply in relation to the amendment that's been proposed.
Madam Chairman, with respect, thank you. I was just asking if Councillor Reid actually does have a right of to reserve his speech until the end of the debate on the amendment. And my understanding was that he may not. I apologise if I'm wrong.
Thank you, Chairman. I understand Councillor Reid was actually reserving his right to speak. So he seconded the amendment and he's reserved his right to speak on the amendment at a later stage in the debate, if I'm correct. Yes, so that's absolutely fine.
Right, thank you. Which way does this? Thank you. Councillor Lee Steptoe, please. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I'm going to speak against the amendment. So against the amendment, and let's make it very clear what that amendment has done is it's thrown in the towel. It's thrown in the towel as regards Grantham ever having 24/7 A&E ever again. You know, I'm sure that all members have done their homework on this, as it were. The A&E is to be replaced by an urgent treatment centre. The research that I've done, and I've spoke about it in the chamber before, it's a glorified GPs. Okay, you cannot remotely compare the services, the acute services and A&E offers with a UTC. So unfortunately, it looks like the ruling group has thrown in the towel as regards continuing the campaign for a 24/7 A&E in our town. I understand why, as I've said at great length in various meetings. I'm Grantham born and bred. I remember marching in the 1980s against cuts. During the Thatcher years, I remember being vehemently opposed to the Blair reforms when my own party was reforming the NHS in the early part of this century. I really was hoping to come here today and talk on a cross-party consensus. How naive I was. You know, I spoke about what a wonderful thing cross-party consensus can be at the last meeting as regards the establishment of a Grantham Town Council. And I don't go back on anything that I said at that meeting. That really was true cross-party working in progress. And hopefully it's going to achieve real things. but it really did not last long, did it? And, you know, I'm going to pick my words very carefully, but I personally am frustrated beyond belief. I'm sure that there are other members in the chamber today who feel the same way. Perhaps the absent seats also tell a story. Again, you know, without casting aspersions, people have their own reasons not to be at a meeting. But I do think the Grantham community will be extremely disappointed when they hear about the outcome today. It's obvious which way the vote is going to go. So I will not be taking part in any sort of calls for recorded votes or whatever. This has been stitched up before the meeting. The community deserves better, okay? They will make their own judgments, and I'm going to now go and make a better use of my time and go and teach teenage kids.
Thank you. Councillor Ray Wotton, please. Apologies, it should be Councillor Jan Hansen.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. In 2015, an NHS committee entitled the Advisory Committee on Resource Allocation put a report together entitled Unavoidable Smallness Due to Remoteness. Their remit was to identify small remote hospitals. It would seem that their idea of a small remote hospital would be one that served less than 200,000 people. They particularly focused on potentially higher costs faced by hospitals which are unavoidably too small to achieve full economies of scale. Therefore, it would seem to me that their focus was mainly on saving costs and not on saving lives. Tragically, my family, along with many others across the country, have suffered from losing a loved one unnecessarily as a result of understaffing and inadequately operated local hospital services. What I witnessed will certainly stay with me for the rest of my life, that is for sure. As an elected member of this council, I certainly don't want on my conscience regrets that I haven't done everything possible in order to help secure safe staffing and 21st century services for our local hospital and residents. It would seem to me that a fair and reasonable strategy would be to put an urgent plan of operation in place whereby Grantham Hospital has 24-hour, 7 days per week opening hours, even if it is initially as a UTC, urgent treatment centre, with the intention of bringing services more into the 21st century as a result, as a matter of urgency, and definitely not leaving it as a UTC unit permanently, as has been proposed. In fact, only yesterday it was brought to my attention that very recently a local resident suffered a heart attack. And if it wasn't for the professionalism of our NHS staff and the fact that this took place during the opening hours of Grantham Hospital, the gentleman almost definitely would not be with us today. And incidentally, I'm led to believe that this particular gentleman has led a very active life and is younger than myself. We all know that within this district of South Kesteven and surrounding areas, there has been a massive increase in the local population, with plans of further massive increases in the pipeline. It seems to me that as a local government, especially on healthcare matters, we need to be thinking and planning far more long-term and make a much bigger effort to obtain our fair share of funding. There is absolutely no doubt that safe staffing saves lives and money, whereas shortages in basic staffing numbers and services can only result in avoidable loss of lives and extra costs incurred through locum and agency staff costs, as an example. I personally have absolutely no doubts whatsoever that as a result of the historical underfunding of the county of Lincolnshire for far too many decades now, especially regarding healthcare investment, that the many local residents who are suggesting that it can be claimed that there are people within the senior leadership roles of our county of Lincolnshire who, as a result of their failure to obtain fair funding for Lincolnshire, can reasonably be accused of having blood on their hands. As a council, I firmly believe that it is our duty to stop this half-hearted approach regarding fighting for fair funding for Lincolnshire and immediately begin by engaging seriously with Lincolnshire's MPs. After all, their number one priority should be to speak up for us all in Westminster. I have reason to believe that this is still not yet happening. Just check out the Rural Fair Share campaign in Westminster. Sadly, out of our 7 central Lincolnshire MPs, only 3 have signed up to it. If it's their careers that they're worried about, just for the record, Rishi Sunak, Jacob Rees-Mogg, John Redwood, Robert Jenrick and Nadine Dorris are all supporting the Rural Fair Share campaign. And it certainly doesn't appear to have had a negative effect on their careers. Who knows, by giving 100% support for funding in Lincolnshire, in particular healthcare, our
30
MPs
seconds left.
may not only help the most sick and vulnerable people in our community big time, but it may also help their career prospects no less. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ray Wotton, please.
And Chairman, may I say, it's really good to be here today. I'm really pleased to be
And
speaking.
can I just say, if you feel you need to sit down, then please sit down.
Thank you. I was going to say it. Thank you very much indeed. May I start by thanking this council and the members for their kind messages and cards following my stroke. My GP confirmed I had a stroke and needed to go to A&E straight away to Lincoln Hospital. The care that I received from stroke unit was excellent, and I thank the staff for looking after me. My only complaint is that I arrived at 3:30 on the afternoon, and I had to wait until 4:45 the next morning, 13 hours to be admitted, which I think is disgraceful, especially when I'm supposed to be seen by an hour. Madam Chairman, Linda and I are proud to have been campaigning for our hospital, attended the first rally in 2004 to save our services. In addition, since the 16th of August 2016, in the fight to save Grantham Hospital A&E from overnight closure, I attended rallies, delivering a petition to Downing Street, public and board meetings, putting the case to those in charge at every opportunity. Tabling several motions of debate at council, we are passionate about the NHS and the service that it provides to us all, regardless of income. However, the recent consultation for the Acute Service Review commissioned by the Lincolnshire Clinical Commissioning Group, its recommendation was against us, and that our A&E had to become a UTC. The outcome came as no shock to everyone, but was still hugely disappointing to campaigners, despite the fact that the majority of people living in Grantham voted for an A&E. Doctors said that 97% of cases that will be presented can be dealt with by UTC. For me, the most important thing is that we have the best service for our residents and open 24/7. When the UTC was trialled recently, the public satisfaction was high and the service given good. We are told that Grantham Hospital didn't meet the criteria of level 1 A&E before the overnight closure. Neither was it a single specialist service, and therefore it could be categorised as a type 3 department, and that there was no difference between a level 3 A&E and a UTC. Now, 6 years ago, I had a heart attack again at Grantham, and the service saved my life. So I'm really pleased. It wasn't a UTC, it was at 2 o'clock in the morning. So I'm really pleased that our service was there and then. I do worry, Madam Chairman, that Lincoln A&E will not cope with patient numbers arriving from Grantham, as my experience showed that waiting times are too long. Added to this, transport costs and travelling times, but patient outcomes to me are the most important factor. So I support this amended motion. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton, and it's good to see you back. Councillor Linda Wotton, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Well, my competitor's back. I wish my husband would stop doing personal market research, but there. My beating heart is here in Grantham with all my Grantham councillors. We've walked a rocky road together. We've stood together, regardless of politics. We've stood up for the community and we've done our best. And I think there's no shame on our part. Ray and I, in the past, attended ULHT board meetings along with other campaigners and activists, speaking up for our community at every opportunity to voice our concerns against the loss of services at our beloved hospital. We have spent many hours, amounting to days and weeks at meetings, workshops, talking shops. Back in 2016, ULHT took the decision to close our overnight A&E service on safety and staffing issues. Then during the pandemic, Grantham Hospital became a green site dealing with the backlog of operations. The UTC was run by Lincolnshire Community Health Service. Both were successes. ULHT was challenged by a judicial review for their A&E closure decision. And we now have a daytime A&E service and an overnight GP out of hours service. I have always said Grantham Hospital is the lowest denominator, and we have lost services to Lincoln and Boston hospitals. We have been through the sustainability and transformation plan, healthy conversations, and now the acute services review. And it is obvious the clinicians have had the last say. And in my mind, it is all about staffing and finance. And sadly, ULHT cannot support and maintain 3 A&E departments. Just as a slight aside, UTC, as some members have mentioned, is for, I won't sing it because I'll put you all off. It's for sprained, strained, suspected broken limbs, minor head injuries, cuts, grazes, bites, stings, eye problems, scalds and minor burns, coughs and colds. A good replacement for not being able to get a GP's appointment. We in Grantham want more. We want more than just a UTC. 6 years is a long time of commitment, standing up for our community. But on the back of the acute service review, even the Wednesday night vigil has stopped. We have been listened to, but not heard. The battle is done. Thank you, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wotton. Councillor Philip Knowles.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I'm from Bourne, if you've not noticed. I'm actually from Bourne, and it hadn't been in my intention really to speak about matters that are primarily to do with Grantham. So I'd not really thought of needing to say something today. But I've got 2 or 3 items or questions that I would like to understand. I think we'd all come today with the idea that we'd be fairly united in trying to do the best for Grantham people in terms of hospital appointments and hospital things that happened there. And there has been a long campaign by members right across the board to try and restore the best of all services to Grantham. I was therefore disappointed, the leader, I'm sorry, Callum, but disappointed that your first up thing was to get up and say, us and them, you do that so we can do this. Immediately, yes, that's what you said. You put in amendments at the last minute, so we can do that as well.
It is usual practice, Councillor Knowles, that how we work in this chamber, if we would like a better working relationship, then in future meetings, I'm sure you could share amendments with us, just like we could share them with you.
Yes. Thank you. I'm not denying that, but we started off by saying, you do it so we can do it. And there was no need for that. I would have wanted both the amendment and the provisional proposal to be given to me at the earliest possible opportunity for such a serious matter as this, so I could weigh up the pros and cons and look at them and understand them as best we could. And to ask for that, ask for a little time to read it, I don't think was unreasonable. But I'll move on from there. 2 other major concerns. And the first one is the amendment has been proposed, seconded formally, but with no comment at this stage. And yet we've not heard any reason why the watering down, in effect, of the original motion should be appropriate. It is quite clearly supporting the report of the bodies that have been looking at it, but I've not heard yet why, from anybody, why it is better than still demanding the full service to be returned to Grantham. So that concerns me. You know, we've accepted the report, in effect. The second thing is about assurances. It assures us that 97% of all people who need to be treated will be treated at the new centre at Grantham. Now, I'm very sceptical about assurances and promises, and in public policy and in public bodies, in government, in NHS, in all sorts of things. If you look at housing, you know, promises and assurances are not met. If you look at hospitals, assurances and promises that we would meet 90% in being seen in 20 minutes, all this sort of thing, from the ambulance service right through to the hospital, those are not met. So what if at the end of the day, 97% is optimistic, which it is likely to be, and that number is not met? What happens if it's 95%, or it becomes 90%, or 85%, and a growing population in Grantham are getting less and less service from what they were promised at Grantham Hospital as it's going to be? And more people have to be transferred the distance. Everybody is aware that that is not good for patients. Some patients will suffer because the longer they have to travel, the worse it is. Nobody's going to argue that. I don't think I would be arguing too much. My brother has been in the health service all his life, and I understand some of the considerations he's had to make as a senior executive in the thing, that doctors and people have to make reviews, have to make decisions about where best to treat people. And I understand that. I understand it's not such a simple issue as put it all in there and everything's all right. I understand that entirely. However, what if those assurances are constantly underachieved, as many assurances across public government in all funds, and I'm not making a political point here, have always been and are missed and not achieved? What if at the end of the day, Grantham is left behind and not given a proper hospital service from the new hospital? The last thing I'd say is, for all those people who have been campaigning very hard, and we hear the emotion of one of those people and they hear about everybody else, are they not? I don't know how they can really support anything other than fight on for a full service at Grantham, because this will not come back once it's gone. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Knowles. Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Thank you. I have listened to everybody's comments, and as was made aware, I've only just recently seen this amendment. I'm not even sure if it's an amendment. It's more a counter motion, because this does not support my motion. This actually undermines it significantly. And in doing so, I think Councillor Steptoe touched on it, I'm actually heartbroken and I'm inwardly furious, because it's not the people in here who may suffer from this, but the vulnerable elderly people who are among just that 3% who we so lightly have dismissed in this amendment. 700 people, 700 people may die, could die, will suffer, travelling across the county, out of the county. If you vote for this, it will be the death knell of our A&E, and it will be on your hands, because you've failed your communities. You've failed the 6,000 people in our high street who marched for that hospital. You failed the people like the Wootons here today, who I have stood by at meeting after meeting, at protest after protest. Most of you incidentally didn't. That's how passionate I am, because lives are at risk. We have a duty of care as councillors for everyone in our community, not just the 97%. And incidentally, quite right, Councillor Knowles, that is a very dodgy figure. And the reason I say that It's because when I challenged the clinical commissioning group about where they actually got it, they couldn't even tell me what services will be actually provided under the new roof. How can you come up with any figure at all if you can't quantify that? They couldn't compare what we had at Grantham A&E, and incidentally, it's currently picking up Jan's point about that gentleman whose life was saved. It's currently an A&E. Will his life be saved in a few months' time if these changes go ahead? And the chances are no. And it's not just our community, it's the staff involved in this as well. What about the pressure on our emergency ambulance crews who are having increasing demands on them? They are on the front line trying desperately to make up for the errors of the decision making of the people at the top who don't have to sit there trying to keep someone alive for 45 minutes, an hour, maybe an hour and a half, and maybe sitting outside Lincoln A&E for maybe 3 or 4 hours. We owe them a duty as well. Let's just touch on the Equalities Act. One of the biggest concerns I had about the proposal was the ready dismissal of the impact on who will be most affected by this. Who will be most affected by this? Everybody with protected characteristics. That alone should have been a shout to the clinical commissioning group, a public body. They should not support these changes. They completely dismissed it, and so have you. Shame on you if you vote for this, and you don't have to vote for this. You've now heard the debate. You can come into this with an open mind. I've given up 15 years of my life trying to save this A&E, not for my good. If I could, every Sunday when it was sunny, I could have been out there in the garden. I could have been spending time with my dying mother, but I didn't, because I knew her only real chance of staying alive in Grantham was that A&E. Now, never mind if you don't care what I say, and I really don't care about the politics of this, it's well beyond that. I'd like to remind you of the key member of staff and what they said.
30 seconds.
This will become a cottage hospital. No consultant will walk into an urgent treatment centre for a job. If they don't go to Grantham, why should they then travel across to Lincoln and to Boston? This was a terrible strategic mistake by the trust. It goes, the CCG, it goes against their own strategic policy. And I asked you please to rethink, because lives, the most important decision you may make for our community, will be at risk. And you cannot have growth plans if you've got no A&E.
Thank you, time. Thank you. Councillor Penny Milnes, please.
Well, I'm just going to say my relatively low-key things I've got to say, but I have been asked to raise the issues of the impacts of what is already happening between Grantham and Lincoln, and that's before we lose the total A&E. And I've heard this several times from quite a few people, and there seems to be some sort of disturbing communications disaster going on between the two hospitals. And I've got some examples here. So, sent by ambulance from Grantham A&E, where they'd already had a 2-hour assessment, sent to Lincoln for admission to the stroke unit. They get to Lincoln to be told, you've got to come through our A&E. And rather similar to Ray, a 12-hour wait to be admitted to that stroke unit. A very frail patient, yesterday, near the end of life, removed from a Lincoln ward at short notice and sent to Grantham, only to discover that no one knew anything about him and why he was there. And it took quite some time to sort out, whilst he sat in a wheelchair, very confused. An inpatient from Grantham sent to Lincoln A&E for further assessment, after waiting all night, was told he wasn't seen because he was a Grantham patient and sent back to Grantham.
I mean, this is what I've been told, third world, not 21st century, for what's happening at the moment. And I would like to know why we are being already subject to these horrendous stories. And that's, you know, whilst we've still got a 12-hour A&E, what's going to happen after that? And it is the shortage of acute beds as well, impacting on this. And all that travelling up and down, if you don't have a car, or relatives don't have a car and everything. So I would like that taken forward, that if we are going along this line temporarily, that something is done about these communications and improvements in the way of working between these two hospitals. I believe it stems at the Lincoln end. I think they're under an awful lot of pressure as it is. I don't know how they're going to cope with all this extra workload. And I've got my own personal stories as well, which I won't tell you about. But those are from just 3 examples from lots of stories I'm being told at the moment. Thank you.
These proposals by the clinical commissioning group are not temporary, they're permanent. Just need to make that point. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you, Councillor Mills. Councillor Richard Cleaver.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Like Councillor Knowles, I wasn't planning to speak in this debate. Again, as I'm not a Grantham councillor, but this is an issue that I've been aware of and have been following for the last 6 years. And frankly, I'm disappointed. I was greatly encouraged that this emergency meeting was called. I thought it was the right thing to do, showing respect to the people of South Stephen, the people of Grantham particularly. And actually, you know, I think they deserve better than us to be looking at a motion that was only published early today and an amendment that was only circulated half an hour ago. I don't think that's good enough. I'm really quite disappointed about it. I wish, and I don't know if it can be made to happen, we can actually adjourn and negotiate a composite motion that we could all agree on. I think that would be a really good thing. I don't know if that can happen. If it can't happen, I would like to propose an amendment to Councillor Stokes's amendment. And my proposed amendment to his amendment would read as follows. So the first sentence would read, South Stephen District Council deeply regrets the downgrade of emergency services at Grantham and District Hospital. We support the return of 24/7 access to emergency services. Sorry, we support the return of 24/7 access to Grantham and District Hospital emergency services and strongly hope that this will be permanent and look forward to its expansion as the town grows further. Remove the inappropriate apostrophe after the NHS leaders. Add in a new sentence, a new third paragraph, which states, however, the council notes that 21,500 Lincolnshire patients already travel over 45 minutes to access A&E by car, and that this action of the CCG and ULHT will add a further 750 patients to that number. And then in the last sentence, I would like that to read, instead of we work with the trust, we will encourage the trust, primary care networks and the bodies within the new integrated care system to bring further services and investment to Grantham. So I'm replacing the words in the final sentence, the words work with the word encourage, with the trust, primary care networks, and the bodies within the new integrated care system. Is that, everybody got that? Is that clear? Is that okay? And obviously, yeah, I'd like to put that forward as a compromise proposal, please.
Thank you. Councillor Stokes, do you wish to agree to that? Or do you wish to read it and think about it?
Yeah, I would like to have a read of it, please, first. Chairman, thank you.
Thank you. We'll adjourn the meeting for 5 minutes so that can be passed and read. Thank you.
Please. It's not part of the speech because there may be more later, but I just need to make a key point.
Stand, please.
Thank you. Picking up the proposal, when you're talking about supporting the return of the 24/7 access emergency services, technically they're not emergency services that are being provided. That would be what an A&E provides. The unit that will be provided would be open 24/7, but you can't really deem it emergency services as such. That's the real crux of the issue.
Thank you. We'll adjourn the meeting till 10 past. Thank you. That should give me good time. Thank you. Right, I think we are there finally. Thank you. Could I have quiet, please? Could I have quiet, please? Thank you. Right, Councillor Stokes, do you accept this amendment by Councillor Cleaver to your amendment?
Yes, I do, Chairman.
Thank you very much. It's seconded by Philip Knowles. Yeah. And do you accept this amendment to the amendment, Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Madam Chairman. What is very gratifying and very sincere is the cross-party working of all of us to come to something which is for the best of Grantham. There isn't a person in this room that doesn't agree with the heart and soul of Councillor Charmaine Morgan and her terrific efforts. But we sadly don't have the power to actually yield what we would really want. So the best that we can do is good by me. Thank you.
Thank you. I will go now to Graham Watts. If you could just read out the full amendment so we know what we will discuss in the debate. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So it's my understanding that the amendment now reads as follows. South Kesteven District Council deeply regrets the downgrade of emergency services at Grantham and District Hospital. We support the return of 24-hour access to Grantham and District Hospital and strongly hope that this will be permanent and looks forward to its expansion of the range of services offered as the town grows further. The following paragraph is unamended as circulated to members. There's a new paragraph that states, however, the council notes that 21,500 Lincolnshire patients already travel over 45 minutes to A&E and that these new arrangements will add a further 750 miles to that total. Patients, sorry, to that total. The list of bullet points are unchanged, and there's an amendment to the last sentence of the final paragraph, which now reads, as the town continues to grow and develop, we will encourage ULHT, primary care networks and the new integrated care system bodies to bring further services and investment to Grantham and be a part of the long-term discussion to plan for the future of healthcare in our area.
Thank you, Mr. Watts. Councillor Dilks, did you want to speak in this debate on the?
You're very kind. Thank you, Madam Chairman. I take what Councillor Reid says about cross-party working, but I've got to say, on an issue like this, I am desperately disappointed that this has not been dealt with before today, because it could have done, and we could have avoided all this nonsense, frankly, from the ruling group, I've got to say, who's played politics with this, attempted to, and now, as Councillor Reid says...
Thank you, point of order, thank you.
I don't wish to overlabour the point. The actual motion for this meeting was only published yesterday by our insistence that we needed to see something on what we were voting on. The correct process would have been to actually have had a motion to look at before the meeting was even called. So we only got the motion yesterday. We only had a group meeting last night. We only got to a consensus to round some words today. That's why it's been like this. So if we'd have rewound a bit further when the original meeting was set up, then we could have had a set of words in place much sooner.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Carry on, please.
Thanks, Madam Chairman, and thank you for that explanation. I wasn't aware of that. I withdraw what I said about playing politics, but I've got to say, I do thank the independent member who has actually, quite frankly, helped the administration out of a hole that you've dug for yourselves in the white flag amendment that you came to this meeting, whatever the circumstances were. I accept if you didn't get the motion, I didn't know what the motion was going to be myself, nor the amendment. That's what I was saying. But we could have handed out those amendments before the meeting started. I think that would have helped out, Kellen. Can I just say that? I think it would have done. And as you know, at County, we have that protocol in place now that is there that I think makes for smoother meetings. So we should think about that, monitoring officer. And what I would say is this could have been, much better cross-party working together, as it has been for recent years. And I pay tribute not just to Charmaine Morgan for bringing this motion today, and I don't see anything wrong with the motion personally, but I pay tribute to Councillor Ray Wotton and Linda Wotton and others from, across the parties, across this chamber, who have worked tirelessly to get something. Because what we've got, I'm not a Grantham person, but I'm a South Kesteven councillor, and I'll fight for South Kesteven. And I haven't heard yet the reasons why the motion is not good and why the amendment's better. We haven't had the benefit. That's why I wanted Councillor Reid to give his speech early on, so that I could begin and councillors could understand why he and others thought that was a better way of going on. And when I raised the point of order, I thought we were on the same page, and I'm glad that we had the 10 minutes or whatever it was to actually read this, and I realised that we weren't. This, it is raising the white flag. The amendment is. I'm coming round to to supporting the amendment because I can see the amendment to the amendment because I can see which way it's going, and I think it is important that this council gives a unified voice, even if we've spent a long time getting here, to government on it. Whilst I think Grantham should have the best, and I appreciate what Grantham members are saying for their people who use that hospital or want to use that hospital, but we all know Grantham is its proximity to the main north-south routes in this country. We've got the East Coast main line. What happens if we've got the A1, the Great North Road? What happens if you're going to take those people to Lincoln or Nottingham? What happens? And so that's why I want a decent, and the services to remain and to restore the proper services to Grantham. So I'm disappointed with the way it's gone, but hopefully we'll get there to something that we can all accept in the end. I was going to ask about, was it going to be a free vote, Kellen, but I won't ask that now, or is it whipped? I've got to say, and finally, many of us remember, shake your heads, but many of us remember the Boris Brexit bus promise, £350 million a week extra for the NHS if we all voted for Brexit. What happened to that? We should be writing to Boris and asking him, when do we get our share? So I would say I'm not going to go for a recorded vote. I think I'm hopeful that we can all support the amendment to the amendment. I'm not entirely happy with it, but I think it's something we can all live with. And I do thank again Charmaine Morgan. I thank colleagues across, I know you've all worked hard as well over a number of years, but frankly, we shouldn't be raising the white flag, rolling over and saying, okay, it's good enough for Grantham. Frankly, what we've got isn't. And we need to carry on the campaign. Thanks, Madam Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Dilks. Councillor Ian Selby.
Thank you very much, Madam Chairman. I don't know about other members, but I feel physically sick this afternoon. Hearing this arguments amongst ourselves, we should be united here in this council chamber. And I really do feel sick. Whilst I thank Councillor Cleaver for the amendments and at least trying to find some compromise, for me, these water down the original motion from Councillor Morgan. Nothing wrong whatsoever with Councillor Morgan's motion. Madam Chairman, just this morning, I had 2 people contact me about problems getting to other hospitals. One gentleman, he rang me to say that he was having difficulty getting to a Derby hospital for basic treatment, stitches out of his hand. Basic things that could be done locally, but they can't do them locally for legal reasons and daft reasons. Now, back in the 1920s, Madam Chairman, my great-grandfather was admitted to Grantham Hospital. Do you know how he was admitted, Madam Chairman? My Uncle Perce. He put his flat cap on, Madam Chairman. He got on the horse and cart with great-grandfather on the back, and off they went from Skillington to Grantham Hospital. 10 miles, Madam Chairman. When he was in the hospital, they cut him open. he had this operation, and the surgeon couldn't believe that was the only way they could do it. Treat him, sewed him back up, back on the horse and cart the very same day, Madam Chairman, and back to Skillington. And, you know, it feels like we're going back to those days where you have to go these distances to receive that sort of treatment, you know, to receive good treatment. It's just seems such a retrograde step that today, 21st century, that we're having to plead to these authorities, you know, that we want our services within a stone's throw away from where we live. These motions, Madam Chairman, I know we're falling out left, right, and centre about them, but at the end of the day, will the Health Trust, will they listen to a single word of these? I doubt it whatsoever. I really don't. I think we're arguing amongst ourselves about how the wording should be, and they're not going to give a damn about us. They're really not. Thank Councillor Morgan sincerely for the motion that she's put forward today, Madam Chairman, for bringing and for calling us here today. And just another point as well. While we're travelling here, there, and everywhere, and our ambulances are going here, there, and everywhere. It was a council. Are we not supposed to be a green council? Are we not supposed to be keeping an eye on the carbon footprint? You know, it's one of our key policies, isn't it? Madam Chair, I do wish we could unite and get together on this. I think that's all I'll say, Madam Chairman. We're just really becoming a glorified talking shop, aren't we? Thank you, Madam.
Thank you, Councillor Selby. Councillor Callum-Cook.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. And I do appreciate and thank members across the chamber for their views and passion on this topic as well. And it has been raised, you know, I've been on this council now for nearly 12 years, and it's been an issue that has always been arising over those last 12 years in terms of the hospital and the views and potential investments and downgrades on the facilities there. And I think ultimately, and it sort of expands on what Councillor Ian Selby was just saying, is that we need to appreciate that the decision of what happens at Grantham Hospital is ultimately taken by the Hospital Trust and the Clinical Commissioning Group. And outside of that, it lands at the County Council in terms of their Health Scrutiny Committee. And I'm aware that they've got it on their agenda later this week. And healthcare across the Grantham area is incredibly important. And I do take umbrage to people saying that lives don't matter, because they all matter, as we all know from our residents across the entire of this district. We've had issues with this A&E, which, you know, let's not get into the debate of what an A&E is and what level it is and what it is. You know, for me, it's always been important that we get those doors open 24/7 with unrestricted access, not closing at 6:30 and not everything else that we see. But we need to make sure that those doors are open so our residents know that they can go there. And if they have to be stabilised there and then taken to a centre of excellence, then that's where you would want to go. Because quite frankly, if I was seriously ill, I would want to go to the best place possible with the best specialists to ensure that I get the best of care. And that stands whether it's me, my family, or my friends. And we all know that Grantham has got growth plans moving forwards. And that population growth will support improved services in terms of hospitals. The plans that have been put forward will work closer with our community-led GPs that know our population closer to the ground than what we do. You know, our NHS workers have been working incredibly hard over the last couple of years. And in fact, Grantham, in many respects, has gone above and beyond as a green facility, because they've been doing operations for people not just within our own county, but for people further afield, coming to Grantham for their healthcare plans. And I know I keep saying about meetings, about devolution. And when we get devolution for Lincolnshire, this will give us a greater say and greater investment and greater budgets in terms of healthcare, which is vitally important for us. And that's why I keep banging on about devolution, about we are missing out in Lincolnshire, because if we don't get a deal, we will not get the powers that we need to really shape our healthcare in this area. And that's partly one of the reasons why we all know that the NHS in this area suffers, not from funding. And okay, there's a question about fair funding that I'll come on to, but in terms of people wanting to live here. So one of our ambitions as a district is that we want to make this area one of the best places to live, work and visit. Because if we can attract people that want to work here, then we can fill those job vacancies in those hospitals and allow people to want to work here to then support our residents. And that's incredibly important. And we know that we are fighting in an extremely difficult market, because we know there are staff shortages in the NHS, simply because they don't have the medical professionals available in the numbers that we require. So that's why we make a big thing at this council about making it as to make it as best place to live, work and visit. And in terms of cross-party work, and I am pleased that Councillor Richard Cleaver made that amendment. Of course, I understand some of the views that have been raised as well. But, you know, the NHS clinicians in the NHS, who are the professionals and who know the information, they are providing the best quality healthcare to our population in terms of what they believe is right for our area. And, you know, using that community-led healthcare, and I appreciate some people don't accept that 97%, but that figure is coming from NHS professional clinicians. You know, that is not something that's been magicked up out of thin air. That is from statistics and data that both the CCG and ULHT are using. And it comes back to my first thing is, it is incredibly difficult for us as a district council to discuss this because, you know, we are not the decision makers on this one. It is the CCG, it is ULHT, and ultimately it's the Health Scrutiny Committee at the County Council. And I'm pleased that, and many of you will have seen, there has been continued investment into Grantham Hospital and the wider Lincolnshire area. And we need to get that fairer funding, as Councillor Hanson has said. And cross-council, we work together as leaders, including with our MPs, in terms of how we can get additional funding and investment into our district. And part of that will be through a devolution deal. And I do agree that we need that debate on the long-term future of healthcare across our district, because it is vital that we start to factor in the future growth plans of this area to make sure that we have the best healthcare moving forwards.
Thank you, Councillor Cook. Councillor Charmaine Morgan.
Thank you. Unfortunately, although I would love to support the amendments, I can't support the amendments because actually I think it makes the situation worse. In particular, if you just look at the first sentence, we had South Kesteven District Council opposes any further downgrade. That's now become deeply regrets. Where's the opposition gone? And that was actually one of the key parts of the amendments I did agree with. I'd like to answer, if I may, a few of the points that have been raised. Councillor Callum Cook is quite right. Thanks to the government, the key decisions regarding our health service are actually made by the Hospital Trust Board and the Clinical Commissioning Group. However, as a council, both county and district, we are actually key influencers within the decision-making process. And I will say during the judicial review, the previous united voice of the district council opposing the downgrade of A&E, and also the closure of our hospital at no notice in 2020 was actually referred to during the judgment. That's how important it was, because the judge weighted heavily the fact that the councils supported the community and the desire to retain the acute services at Grantham. This does not go in that direction at all, and I believe would undermine any judicial review should that ever now be possible, and I'm not convinced it will be looking at this. We've mentioned that patients can be stabilised in the urgent treatment centre only if you've got the ability and skills to do it, and there is no guarantee from the questions we've asked that that will be the case, and the patient may go on elsewhere if they make it. The distances that they may have to cover, the most at risk, as I've said before, the most frail, the most elderly, may not. Community-led GPs, I have a huge amount of respect for our GPs. I think they do a phenomenal amount of work. They're completely overloaded. They're completely lacking in numbers. And in fact, we're facing a crisis with GPs, which is all the more reason we should not actually be accepting an increase of pressure on that service. Ask anybody in the community about how easy it is to get a GP appointment, and they all have a very strong view about how good care in the community actually is. Try and get a home carer and you will know how good care in the community is. Let's add to that the need to maybe be fed because you've been pushed out of hospital early after an operation. And actually there's virtually no support for that whatsoever if you are living on your own. There are huge holes, and I would say that as a former home carer. There are huge holes in the care in the community process. we want to make people want to come here. Totally agree and totally support that. So why is it when we put the proposal to the public, do you believe we should have growth plans? 99%, we're good at figures and percentages. Actual figure was worse than that. I'll tell you now, over 800 respondees, only one person said, yes, we should have growth in this area if we have no A&E. That's what members of the public think. And a number of people responding to our consultation are now considering moving away from the area because they know that the A&E is under threat, especially those who are the most vulnerable, who I mentioned earlier. Why on earth would you stay next to a hospital who, if you have a seizure and need to be treated in 10 minutes, can't deal with you and will send you somewhere else? I'd love to support this. But going back to the cross-party working, I agree the motion was late coming in. I'll explain why.
30 seconds.
Because I actually wanted to work with as many people as possible on the wording who have been heavily involved in the campaign for a long time to make sure they were happy. And in particular, key people with a great deal of medical knowledge. And also, Ray and Linda will attest subsequently. I came back to them and I would like to thank them for working with me.
Thank you, Councillor Morgan. Councillor Cathy Rice-Oxley, please.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I do believe that we need fairer funding across Lincolnshire, and this is absolutely key in many areas. On the hospital, obviously, these are incredibly complex issues. These go back over decades, long before I moved here. Mistakes have been made. Services were moved to Lincoln and Boston. At the end of the day, it's the ULHT and the CCG who are responsible for what they've done to this point and also what they decide to do in the future. But in support of the new amendment, the amendment to the amendment, I'd like to tell you what I think is the key positive for us in Grantham going forward. This UTC will secure permanent 24/7 access to emergency healthcare. I'll say that again. The UTC will secure permanent 24/7 access to emergency healthcare. This is an upgrade on our current situation where we have a daytime A&E and basically a GP's practice overnight. This means that parents of a feverish and hallucinating toddler will not be blue lighted to Peterborough in the middle of the night, as I was a few years ago, longest journey of my life in an absolute panic. And for that, I would like to thank all the campaigners on all sides here and in the community who have worked tirelessly. They've given generously of their time, their energy, their compassion. They have succeeded in getting us 24-hour services. They have made sure that Grantham's voice has been heard. Charmaine and Linda and Ray and others in the community as well. They have stood up for us all, and I thank you for that. I understand the passion and the disappointment, but all is not lost. Let's get 24-hour emergency healthcare back to Grantham. Let's go from there. This is a success that we can build on. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Jan Hansen.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My colleagues have used the word disappointed. I could think of far stronger words to explain how I feel today with this pantomime that's been going on. It was explained to me 3 years ago when I was first elected as a councillor. I stood up and I put forward a motion regarding funding. It was totally non-political and it was thrown in the bin, very much like what was attempted today. And afterwards, a senior cabinet member explained to me, he said, don't be disappointed, Jan, because it's just theatre that goes on in there. Well, I didn't sign up for theatre. And especially today, I'm very disappointed that we've got to this stage with so much argy-bargy. It was only 7 or 8 years ago, I attended a meeting, an NHS meeting, and the main speaker was one of the senior financial managers for the whole of the East of England. And he was actually debating whether or not to close Boston Hospital. So they're actually talking about closing Boston Hospital. And of course, don't forget, it was only a couple of months ago that Lincoln A&E somebody set fire to the A&E. So you imagine if something seriously does happen, as some of my colleagues have been mentioning, if we have problems at the A&E in Lincoln, if it's, you know, we're coming up to winter time and it looks like it's going to be pretty dire again, problems in Boston, who knows? If they get away with what they're getting away with here in Grantham, wouldn't it be great if they only had one A&E? Financially, yes. I can understand the financial side of things. I'm not completely stupid. I've been brought up in business. My family were in business. I understand the financial implications, but we're talking about people here as well. You know, sometimes there has to be a balance. And this system of sides ganging up against each other, you know, it's very childish. You know, I saw it in the playground, and I'm very disappointed to see it amongst adults, especially something that I'd like to think most people or everyone's passionate about. You know, the long-term damage. I have to disagree with Councillor Cook, because he seemed to mention, I hope I haven't got it wrong, but it's not particularly about funding, but it is, because I've been in this county. I've come to Lincolnshire 36 years ago, in 1986. I was still in my 20s, only just. And I liked Lincolnshire. And I thought, it looks marvellous. It looks oldie worldy, because I worked abroad and I came back to Lincolnshire, and it reminded me of my young days where I grew up in Bedford. I didn't realise it's because it's been starved of finance. And that's why it looks oldie worldy, because they haven't spent money on the infrastructure like they have in many other parts of the country. And looking at the Lincolnshire County Council website, and I think it's not on there now, it was taken off, but Lincolnshire County Council admitted that we're losing at least 100 million a year when compared to other counties. Well, in real terms, that means I've been here 36 years. We've probably lost out on £3.5 billion worth of funding. That would build a fantastic hospital. And the problem is, it was explained to me by a very experienced senior NHS expert in London. And he said, Jan, your problem with Lincolnshire is, it is the infrastructure regarding healthcare. And he gave me an example. He said, when somebody becomes a newly, I've got to be careful what I say here, because I know we have some excellent NHS staff, frontline, you know, doctors, nurses. I know that, ambulance drivers, we've got some excellent people, I know that. But he explained to me that because of the infrastructure, it's been so run down, and you can't deny that. It has been run down over decades of weak leadership. This is the way I look at it. When somebody becomes newly qualified, they want to be the best surgeon on the planet.
30 seconds.
So why would you come, with respect, you're not going to come and work in Boston or Grantham. You want to work in London or Nottingham, where the teaching hospitals are, the professors. And this is why we struggle also to get staff. But it is about funding. The bottom line is, any organisation, if it's not properly funded, it will struggle. And that, to me, just seems the reality. Thank you very much, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Ben Green, please.
Thank you, Chair. I rise briefly just to say I think I actually agree with Councillor Dill, because I think there is a divide. And the divide is between sensible realism on one side and fantasy idealism on the other. I think, looking at the journal, there are doctors who have come out, who live in Grantham, work at the hospital no less. They're celebrating that move from the A&E to the UTC. It's not a retrogression. We moved backwards with the A&E, we've moved forwards with the UTC, and hopefully we can all unite, as the town does expand in due course, as this amended motion recognises, to support a further expansion. But it's not the case that it's just retreat after retreat after retreat. We are moving forward. That is something that I think we should celebrate, and we should be rooted in realism fundamentally. Just like these doctors, I think I'm disappointed to see people setting their face against doctors who actually work at the hospital, who are celebrating this change. I side with the doctors. I respect their opinion, their experience of working at the hospital, and I hope that that unity can be found. Firstly, on recognising that with the UTC that's a step forward, and that we can take further steps forward in time. as we account for here. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Green. Councillor Paul Fellows?
Thank you, Chair. I've been pushing my button off and on for about the last 10 minutes, wanting to say something, then deciding it's been said, then wanting to say something. And then I decided having been here with you, fellow councillors, for the last hour and stuff, that I really needed to. I can't support the amendment or the amendment to the amendment because, quite simply, I can't see what was wrong with the original motion. And I found that the amendments actually were not amendments, they were different motions. And I'll take advice on that later, that it seems to be that we can put forward an amendment that's got absolutely nothing to do with the original and accept it as an amendment. I can't see that. I totally accept what Councillor Cook was saying about where we are and where we need to go. I can totally accept the fact that we will have 24-hour service there. We've got that anyway. But we do seem to be abdicating the fact that we say, thanks for that, but what you're giving us isn't good enough. Why can't we say no? Why can't we say we accept everything that's going on, but we actually want better? Now, all my fellow colleagues here will say, well, that's actually what we want. But going back to where I originally started, because again, I stayed on this afternoon after one meeting because I thought this afternoon was important. I really want to pay tribute to Linda and Ray and Charlotte and Ian for all the work they've done. I could not have done that. All that time, all that effort to get us to a point we are now. I am disappointed. I was going to start off and then I thought it was rude, but I thought, oh, why not? In for a penny, in for a pound. Last time I experienced an afternoon like this was when I was trying to get a year 10 drama group to decide on the best course of action for an exam. Round and round and round they go, but the end is always the same. We want the best. I can't support the amendments, even though they will go through, because I can't see any difference. But I know, and that is where I want to be, that we are all from the same hymn sheet. We all want the best. But I see nothing wrong in saying, thank you for what you've given us. Can we have a bit more, please? We deserve better.
Thank you, Councillor Fellows. Have you got a point of order, Councillor Morgan?
First of all, I need to make a few key comments.
If you're summing up.
No, these are points of order in relation to comments that have been made.
Which part of the Constitution are they?
I haven't got the Constitution here, but I can say there are points of order. First of all, there isn't an issue with recruiting staff at Grantham. That's
not a point of order. That's in with the Constitution, is it?
Comments have been. I'm making a point of clarification that, and it is in there. It's a new part of the new Constitution that we can interrupt debate and do that. That was one of the things actually Ashley challenged, because he thought it might cause slight disruption in the debate. But the point is, this is really important, that Grantham has not had an issue recruiting, first of all. Secondly, Grantham was a training hospital. Thirdly, the only reason that we don't have a full A&E 24/7 was because in 2016, ULHT, when it had the number of employees required, 2018, when it had the number of employees required to reopen the hospital fully as an A&E, chose not to. And that's why it's so important we go back now, because it is possible. Thank you.
Thank you. I have no more speakers. We are going round and round in circles, I feel now. So we will go to the vote of the amendment.
But Councillor Fellows made a very valid point. I did not accept this as an amendment. I believe this is an alternative motion. And I would like a judgment on that. And I'd like to call for a vote on my motion.
I'll just get clarification for you.
Thank you, Chairman. Just to clarify, an amendment to a motion must be relevant to the motion and either be to refer the matter to an appropriate body or individual for consideration, to leave out words and insert or add others, or to insert or add words. So as far as I'm aware, the amendment has sought to remove words, add words, amend words, and doesn't negate the original motion.
the original motion have been added to, or where is the original motion within this? The original motion.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, so just to clarify, I think the purpose of circulating a revised amendment, which the proposal of the amendment circulated to all members, is to show the changes that have been made. I think if you look at the first sentence and first paragraph of the original motion, you can see there some clarification in terms of the parts that have remained and those parts that have been removed and added to. So you've got the original amendment before you, and you've also got the amendment before you. So I think members can therefore see the different changes that have been made as part of the amendment.
Sentence, the first sentence that is the same. The entire rest of the motion is different. Why can't we vote on my motion? I suspect it's going to lose anyway from the debate today, and then move on to the other motion as a substantive motion.
So thank you, Councillor Morgan, for that. So what's happened though is we've had an amendment made, debated, it's been properly seconded. We need to go through that process. It is a proper amendment. That you've had that judgment from the Deputy Monitoring Officer. We need to dispatch the amendment before we can move on to having. And if it falls, then of course there'll then be a vote on your original motion. But that's the process that we're required to go through, I'm afraid.
Is it a point of order, Councillor Dilks? And if so, is it? And can you name where it should be in the Constitution, please? Thank you.
I'd like to seek clarification on what we're just being told, Madam Chairman, if I may. I've understood that the monitoring officer was advising us on the amendment to the amendment, and I can see where the amendment to the amendment is a proper amendment, but the original amendment, the proposed amendment, does not relate in any way to the original motion. And in my view, that is not a valid amendment. So frankly, if I'm right, the amendment to the amendment falls anyway because it's an amendment to something that isn't valid.
Thank you. So for clarity, I wasn't explaining the amendment to the amendment. I was explaining the amendment, in fact, the final amendment that's before us now. The details are, in accordance with the Constitution, relevant to the original motion and therefore can be an amendment. I don't really want to just have a further debate on that, Councillor Dilks. That's the position.
Is the final amendment, I haven't got a final amendment, I've only got the amendment. Is that the one that we're talking about? Yeah. So I wasn't aware of any draft amendments, but there we are.
It's the amendment that Councillor Cleaver made and that Councillor Stokes accepted and was seconded, as far as I'm aware. Have I got that correct? Yes, thank you. And that is what we will go to the vote with now. So it has been proposed, it has been seconded. So can I ask all those in favour, please raise your hands. Thank you. Against? 2, thank you. Abstentions? 2, thank you. That motion has been carried, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to clarify, the amendment has been carried. So debate now continues on the substantive motion.
Thank you. Do I have, councillor Cook?
Madam Chairman, I propose, sorry.
Go on, point of order then, please.
That has been carried now becomes the substantive motion. So I'm afraid the original the motion has fallen.
Thank you. Councillor Cook?
Madam Chairman, I therefore propose we move to the vote.
Thank you. So we'll go to the vote then. Is everybody happy and understands what we're voting on again? Yeah, so all those in favour, please raise your hand.
I don't believe there's a case for another vote. We have voted on the amendment. The original motion has fallen. So the only thing on the table is what we already passed, and it doesn't need a second vote because we're not voting against anything else. So I understand that the vote we've had is now conclusive.
I think we're just going for clarification, but I think it's just procedure rules. Thank you.
Sorry, Chairman, yes, just to clarify, so you've just debated the amendment and voted on the amendment. We then return to a substantive motion. So that substantive motion is now on the table for debate. Now, if there are no further speakers on that substantive motion, we're still required to vote on the substantive motion, even though it's pretty much the same, obviously, as the vote we've just undertaken, but just procedurally, we do need to vote on the substantive motion.
So we'll go to the debate, not debate, the vote. Sorry, debate, that's a good new word, isn't it? So we'll now go to the vote. All those in favour, please. Against? Abstentions? Thank you, that has been carried. And thank you everybody for taking part in today's. Councillor Dilks.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. I just wondered if it would be helpful if the monitoring officer could circulate what we have just voted on as the amendment to the amendment to all members at the earliest possible opportunity by email, so that we can be clear if we are questioned as to what we voted on. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That concludes the business for today, and I'd like to thank members for their cooperation. I would also like to say thank you to those members of the public who have joined us today, and I look forward to seeing you all and take a safe journey home. And I now declare this meeting closed. Thank you.
Could I just ask everybody to be upstairs?